Today we're going to be talking about scatter plots and lines of regression. So, this first chart here, what we have is we have a scatter plot. And we have three different types of scatter plots. So, this first one on the left, you have all of your data, which is the dots, and as you draw in a line, essentially kind of connecting all those dots, it looks like it would have a positive slope. And all of those dots are fairly close to our line. So that means that it is a strong positive correlation. And the slope of the line is positive, and all of our points are very close to it. Versus the one next to it, all the lines are fairly close, but it's now a negative. But we have a few outliers, like this point here. That would be an outlier, or one that's fairly far away from our line. So this would be considered weak negative correlation, because not all the lines, not all of our data points are as close as they were for our positive correlation. And then no correlation, well, I could draw a positive sloping line, I could draw a negative sloping line, we could draw, some vertical lines. There's really no correlation between any of the points. And those lines that we drew are called the regression line, and I want you guys to write that definition down. Regression line, and that's a line that approximates the data into a linear function. And today's lesson we're going to be finding that regression line by hand and using our calculator. And then the correlation coefficient is a coefficient that shows how well the data fits into the linear function. And in our calculators, that's going to be written as R. So to find our correlation coefficient, we're just going to find that on our calculator. But for this first one, this first strong positive correlation, I would say R would be fairly close to probably 0.95. 0.95 is really close to 1, so that tells us that our data is really, really close to fitting on the line. And since it's positive, we know we have a positive slope. Versus here, when we have a negative sloping line, our R would be negative. That tells us our slope is negative. And they don't fit as close. I bet you that one would probably be about 0.75. And then here our R, when it's no correlation, would be close to 0. So I bet you it'd be something like 0.1. So just some vocab for our scatter plots and lines of regression. Okay, writing a scatter plot. The table shows data and uses approximate percentage of students who sent applications into two colleges in various years since 1985. Make a scatter plot of data and draw a line of best fit and describe what type of correlation we have. Okay, so on the bottom, we are going to have years, and make sure you label your axes, and I'm going to go, since these all go by 3, my scale on my bottom, I'm going to go by 3. Okay, and then going up, I'm going to draw a little line because I'm going to jump. And let's start with 10 and go by 2s. And I need to label this axes, and this is percent. And we need a title for our table, I should say, and let's call this percentage of students to send applications. Now it's a matter of plotting our points. 0 and 20. 3 and 18. And go through and plot your points as best you can. Approximate if it's not exact. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to draw in a line. And notice how I have our ruler here. So we're going to take our ruler and we're going to rotate it so that it doesn't have to fit exactly on the points, but it best approximates. That looks like it's a little too steep. I might turn it more something like that. Looks like that's a fairly good approximation. So now I'm going to use that straight edge to draw our line. Okay, so now that we've drawn that line, how close does it look like that data fits on our line? Okay, that's what you need to think about when you're trying to describe the correlation. To describe the correlation, I would probably say that it is definitely a negative correlation. Now we need to decide whether it's strong or not. Looks like a lot of those points are fairly close to being on our line. So I would say it is a strong negative correlation. And that's our description. Okay, use two ordered pairs to write the prediction equation. Now pick 2 points that were on your line. I'm going to pick the point 3, 18 and 15, 13. So now write your equation of your line. So find your slope. And that's going to simplify to 5 over 12. All right, now pick one of the points. I'm going to pick 18. I'm going to pick the top one. All right, I'm gonna go through it. I'm gonna solve for B. I'm gonna not go through that work because I think you guys can all handle solving for B. So B is gonna be equal to 19.25. So our equation is y equals negative 5 over 12 x plus 19.25. And if you want to do that negative 5 over 12 in terms of a decimal, that's okay. Now predict the students who will send an application into 2 colleges in 2010. Now remember what X stood for. And I'm going to flip back to the last slide. X stood for years since 1985. So you don't plug 210 in. To get X, you need to do 210 minus 1985 to figure out how many years that is. And it's going to be 25. Now it's just a matter of plugging in. So when you plug that in, you get 8.83 repeating. Or that means that our students who applied to 2 colleges, about 8.83, or approximately 9 students. So let's see how accurate is this prediction. So let's go back to our graph. Looking at our accuracy. So in 25 years, say if I were to continue our line down, "25 years would be somewhere around here, I bet." I would say that's pretty accurate, because remember, we jumped to 10. So, meaning that right here, that would be 8. And we're approximately at about 8, or at about 9 right there. So, that's going to work for, I would say that that's a pretty accurate estimate. Now, finding the regression line on your calculator. Please take a minute to stop the video and to write down all these steps and our keystrokes. I'm going to go through in the actual video on how to do this, but I want you guys to have these steps written down in your notes. So please make sure that you take a minute and write down these steps. So our next example using the calculator, because look at these big numbers. These numbers get pretty big. Okay, so the table shows the median income of U.S. families for the period from 1970 to 2002. Use a graphing calculator to make a scatter plot of the data, find an equation for and graph the line of regression, then use the equation to predict the median income in 2015. So what we're going to do is first we have to make the scatter plot. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to take a minute, make sure you write down this data, and I'm going to jump over to our calculator. Okay, so we are going to use our calculator here to help us find our regression equation. And you should have written down the steps. So to first make our scatter plot, and on a test or quiz, what I'm going to ask you guys to do is I'm going to ask you guys to actually come over and show me your scatter plot with the window. Okay, so make the scatter plot. So what you do is you go over to stat, because technically we're doing statistics. And we want to do number 1, we want to edit. Now if there's anything in there, what you would do is you would arrow up and you would press clear. And arrow over to list 2 and press clear also. So now we arrow down and we start putting in our data into list 1. So input your data. Okay, so I put in my data, and what I would do is I would arrow up and just make sure, press enter so the last one goes in. I would arrow up and just make sure that all of your data points are correct, just so that you know okay. Now arrow over to list 2 and put in your y coordinates, or what our income was. Okay, so again, you should have the same amount of data points. I would make sure that you typed in your numbers correctly, and I'm going through that real quick. Okay, so now that I've done that, go back to your home screen. To get back to your home screen, that's always second, quit. Now we want to graph this. In order to graph it, you press second, y equals, brings up your stat plots, turning plots on and off. So if you press enter, plot 1 we want to turn on, so one is highlighted. These are all the different types of plots that we could have. Really, we're just going to be dealing with the first one. Your X list is always your independent. Your Y list is your dependent, so X and Y, and then the type of mark. So now that that's on, we can go back to our home screen and let's adjust our window, what we're going to graph. Now for your window, this is what a standard window is. I call it a -10 by 10. But that's not going to show because our years range from 1970 to 2002. So look at your smallest year. Your smallest year was 1970. Put in something a little bit less than that. I'm going to go 1965. And then your X max, your largest year was 2002, so I'm going to go 2010. X scale, that's how many little bars you have on the bottom. If you look down here at the graph piece, that's how many little marks we have. Let's go by every 100. So now we don't have that many. That's not a huge deal. Now your Y's. Look at what your Y's range from. Your Y's range from about 9,800 to 51,000. So my Y min, I'm going to go 9,000. Y max, I have 51,000. I'm going to go 53,000. And I'm going to go by thousands on my Y scale. So now, if you press graph, you should see a scatter plot. Okay, we need to find our equation of our line of regression. So to find your equation of your line of regression, you have to go back to the home screen, so second quit. And then what you have to do is you have to go into stat, but now I want to calculate something. What do I want to calculate? I want to calculate number 4, the linear regression. So I can just type out 4 and press enter. So that gives me our, the A is the M, and the B is our Y intercept. So I'm going to take a moment and write that back on our work page. So I'm going to write down our equation real quick for us. And I'm going to round it 3 to 2 decimal places. So we've done our scatter plot. We found the equation for and graphed the line of regression. We need to find R. The calculator is going to do that for us. I'm going to show you guys how to do that in a minute. We need to still graph our line and use that to predict our median income in 2015. Okay, so we now need to find R. Okay, if you notice, our calculator didn't find R for us. because this is the first time that I'm using this calculator. And for some of you, it's the first time you're using your calculator this way too. So I want you to go through this one setting real quick. Once you do this, it's always going to be on. You're always going to find R. So go to your catalog. Anything that's in blue, you press the second key for and go to catalog. This has all of the functions of the calculator in it. If you arrow down, and you're going to have to arrow for a while, down to diagnostic on. And I'm going to keep arrowing down. A quick way to get there, just so you guys know, is to press the X to the -1 button, or the alpha letter for D. And so now that brings us, that jumps us to all the D's. Diagnostic on. Ooh, I went too far. Diagnostic on. If you press enter again, that's going to turn on basically finding the R for us. So now if you press second, enter twice, that's going to bring up linear regression, or the previous entry 2 times ago. If we press enter now we found our R, 0.967. So our R was 0.967. I'm sorry, it's 0.997. Okay, so we found that. We need to graph the equation. So going back to your graphing calculator. So we now need to graph this equation of our line. So go to y equals. Notice how up here plot 1 is highlighted. The easy way to turn on and off your plots is to arrow up and turn off and on the plot. Okay, I need to basically write that whole equation into y1. The easy way to do that is if we go over to vars, that stands for variables. What do we have? We have a statistics equation. So you arrow down to number 5, or you can press number 5. EQ, equation. What do we have? We had a regression equation, so number 1. So basically what that calculator did is it cut and pasted the most accurate equation. So now when we press graph, look, our equation shows up. Okay, so we've graphed our regression equation, and we need to use that equation to predict the median. The easiest way to use your calculator to predict, there's a feature on here that says trace, which is going to trace your graph. If you're looking for a specific value that you want to trace, you have to type in 2015. But I need to find that in our equation. You notice up here it says P1. That means plot 1. If you arrow up and down, it toggles you in between the 2 things that are graphed on the screen. So I toggled down, now my regression equation. That's the equation I want to find my value at 2015 at. So I go 2015 and I press enter. Oh no, I got an error. I kind of rigged it so I was going to get an error, but I didn't realize I was going to get that error. The reason we got this error, and I got error in everything, is because our window isn't big enough. Our window, when we went to that, if you press window, it's not going to do anything because it's telling us to either quit or go to. So I need to quit. Now when I press window, I can now adjust my window. Let's make it maybe 2020. Now when I press graph, our graph again shows up with our line. I might need to adjust our Y's a little bit. Let me adjust our Y's a little bit. So if I adjust our Y's 53, let's go 60. So now, when I press graph, looks like 2015 might be on there. So we press trace. Again, you have to make sure that your line is highlighted, not the plot, the line. So you have to either toggle down, because that's in Y1. Okay, now let's type in 2015, see what we get. Press enter. Now that value, your Y value there, is going to tell you the Y value of our equation corresponding with the X value of 2015. So our Y value is 69,213.93. And that's the most accurate of that's the most accurate possibility, and that's the one I want you guys to give me. So now jumping back, we have used that to predict our median income. Our median income prediction using that equation of our line was $69,213.93. So we've done everything that they've asked. Okay, there are your lesson questions for the day. You want to use your calculator for this. For list 1 and list 2, make sure you realize one thing. You want to clear. So you arrow up and you clear the lists. Okay? And just so you guys know, I'm not going to accept, I didn't know how to do it on my calculator because I just wrote out all the directions. I know it was a lengthy video, but it's because I tried to make our directions super clear. So please make sure your lesson questions are submitted on time.